meditation of each and every one of our hearts. He's God, who is our rock and our Redeemer. Of all places to be stationed, Israel is the worst. And when you go to Israel as a Roman soldier, you got to be prepared for the weirdest, strangest traditions that these people have. You've got to be prepared to watch people walk around with long beards, curly hair, strange outfits, weird language, and the food. Don't even go there. I don't even know what they put in the food to make it taste so weird. I don't even want to know what they put in the food to make it taste so weird. Israel is the worst of places to be stationed for a Roman soldier like me. But you know what? It's not because of any of those things. It's because of the attitude. The people in Israel are constantly revolting. They're revolting against Rome. They're constantly having uprising, rebellion. I don't know what it is about these people, but they just like to pick a fight. And for Roman soldiers, that means that we've got our hands full all the time. We've got to be on high alert, mostly every day. And those days that we don't have to be on high alert, we know that probably tomorrow we will. So it's a high-tension scenario. So when I heard, with my promotion to Centurion, that I was going to be stationed in Israel, I groaned. But there was a piece of good news. I wasn't going to Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the capital, and that's where all these revolts start in this revolting little place. I was going to Caesarea. Now, Caesarea, if you're going to Israel, Caesarea is the place to be. Caesarea is a Roman enclave inside a Jewish nation. It was built by Herod the Great in honor of Caesar, Caesarea. It was built to imitate, to mimic, to look like a Roman city. It has all the modern Roman day conveniences. It has running toilets. It has hot water baths, bathhouses. It has a theater. It has a chariots racing stadium. It has gladiator games. They host them regularly. They have a sporting complex. The streets are nice and clean and wide for chariots to go down. I mean, it is the place to be. Not to mention, it's on the coast, so it's a port, so you've got goods constantly coming in and out, so you've always got new things from home coming in. And on days off, I get to go to the beach. Caesarea, if I'm going to Israel, is the place to be. And I'm going to be stationed at the palace of Herod. Now, Herod's dead. Herod was dead when I got there. But his palace had become the capital. It was used by all the governors after he had died as their home and as their place to entertain guests and as their place of meeting for government reasons. So Caesarea was the capital of the region. Was the capital of the region, but it was also the capital of the governor's palace, and that's where I was going to be stationed.
Go.
Now, of all the people when I was stationed at Caesarea, of all the people that I met, and that's some pretty interesting people. For the most part, palace life is pretty boring. It's pretty dull. It's luxurious and easy, but it's dull. It's not very interesting. I got to meet some interesting people. I got to meet foreign kings and queens and dignitaries, all sorts of colorful people. I got to see the famous actors, actresses, the sports, the athletes, the gladiators. I got to meet a lot of very interesting people when I was there at the palace. But the most interesting person that I met, I should say it this way, the person who changed my life more than any other was a Jew. Didn't expect it when I was going there. I can remember it just like it was yesterday. It was about middle afternoon. It was hot. A day like this, actually. It was very hot. The sun was high and burning. One of those days that you don't want to be in armor. You know what I mean? And 70 horsemen came crashing into Caesarea, galloping. The horses, their foam. They had to be rubbed down with sweaty horses. The men, covered with dust, lips parched. They had traveled all night and all day. They had walked from Jerusalem halfway there overnight. It took them all night. And they had an entourage with them that had turned back because they were on feet. And once they got to the halfway point, then they jumped on their horses at dawn and rode the rest of the way. with no provision. So these soldiers were cranky. They were dirty and grumpy. And they came in. But apparently they had an important mission. They had an important package to deliver. It was a Jew named Paul. Apparently Paul had stirred up some trouble in Jerusalem, and he was coming to the governor Felix that I was serving. And he was coming because he was on trial for something that had happened in Jerusalem a couple days earlier. I don't know what it was. I didn't know what it was, but I was going to get to find out because I was on duty the next several days. And when finally his accusers arrived, 5 days later, I got to stand in the court and hear the whole thing unfold. And I got to hear Paul's troubling words. The words were giving people trouble in Jerusalem. His words were troubling, and they were troubling to me, and they were troubling to other people. Very troubling. Felix sat up on his throne with a high and lofty attitude, and he motioned for the Jews to speak. Now the Jews, I could tell that they were mad. I could tell that Paul had done something to really, really make these guys very angry. How could I tell? Because they had paid to bring in some big guns. They had paid to bring in a lawyer. A guy's name was Tertullus. Yeah, I remember. Because he reminded me of a turtle. Right? He had kind of a hunchback, and when he talked, his neck came out and in. That's what I remember. Tertullus. That's how I remember his name. Right? I thought, wow, he must be a good lawyer for that, because he looks strange. He's got to be a very good lawyer. And just think about the cost of bringing a lawyer. They had to pay him for all his travel expenses. They had to pay for room and board. They had to pay 5 days out and 5 days back, at least 10 days. How many people here could afford to send a lawyer across the country, pay for all their expenses and their legal fees for 10 days? I know I couldn't. So Paul must have done something to really make these guys angry, to pay Tertullus to come and defend to prosecute him. So their lawyer Tertullus opened up with a very traditional way, but it was really obnoxious. Right? When people argue cases before lawyers in the Roman world, they start by laying out some flattery. It's pretty commonplace to do that. But this guy was laying it on thick. I mean, half of his speech was flattery, and the other half was actually prosecuting the case. I mean, he stood up there and he said, "Oh, Your Excellency, all the Jews everywhere know how great you are. Oh, your foresight. Oh, you just could see things out in advance and plan for them. We all appreciate everything that you've done and all the peace in the land that you've brought about. It's incredible. And so we ask your benevolence for just a few minutes to hear our case as we lay it before you. We know that you'll make a fair decision. We know that you'll make the right decision." It was really obnoxious because I knew that those Jews hate Felix. Felix is a bad ruler. Everybody knew that. I mean, Felix was a slave. He was born a slave, and he got freed. And because of his family and power, he had a brother who was in power. He got put in this place of prestige. I mean, behind his back, they said he rules with all the power of a king, but the brain of a slave. That's what they said behind his back. And this guy, nobody liked him. Foresight, he couldn't even see the end of his nose. All right? In fact, the Jews hated his leadership so much that in just about 2 years after this took place, they're going to send an envoy to Rome to complain about him, and he's going to be deposed. The Jews are actually going to be responsible for him getting kicked off the throne. That's how much they hate him. So then here this guy standing before him, praising him and exalting him. It was pathetic. And then finally, he got around to making his case, and his case really boiled down to 3 things. He said, Paul is a troublemaker, making trouble all over the empire, stirring up riots wherever he goes. And Paul attempted to desecrate the temple. It's an interesting phrase. He attempted to desecrate the temple. Anybody have your Bible open? What's the third thing? You see it?